Picture a high-flying businessman, his life a whirlwind of power and wealth, standing in his luxurious penthouse, ready to fire the nanny he's convinced is deceiving him. He's sure she's hiding something sinister, ready to cut her out of his life and his babies forever. But then, in a moment that stops time, his infant son reaches out, not for his father, but for her. That tiny gesture shatters everything he believed, unraveling a truth so profound it rewrites their story. What was the nanny hiding? How could a baby's choice pierce a father's heart? This isn't just a tale of suspicion and betrayal, it's a journey of trust, redemption, and a bond that defies all odds. You're about to hear a story so gripping, so emotional, it might just bring you to tears. It's the unforgettable saga of Daniel Carter, Sophie Reynolds, and little Ethan. Hit that play button, and let's dive into a tale that'll leave you speechless. Trust me, you won't want to look away. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the channel, where we unearth stories that hit you right in the feels, stories of real people, real struggles, and real heart. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and join our family of story lovers. We're so excited to have you. Today, we're diving into a tale that sounds like it's straight out of a Hollywood blockbuster, but it's 100% real, raw, and deeply human. This is the story of Daniel Carter, a millionaire CEO, Sophie Reynolds, the nanny he hired to care for his son, and a single moment that flipped their worlds upside down. This isn't just about wealth or family drama, it's about trust broken and rebuilt, grief faced head-on, and the unexpected bonds that can heal even the deepest scars. Let's start with Daniel Carter. At 42, he's the CEO of Carter Capital, one of New York City's most powerful investment firms. His name opens doors in boardrooms, his signature seals multi-million-dollar deals, and his net worth, north of $50 million, affords him a lifestyle most can only dream of. Picture a penthouse perched above Central Park, with sleek marble floors, modern art worth more than most homes, and floor-to-ceiling windows framing the city skyline. But behind the polished exterior, Daniel's life was crumbling. A year ago, his wife, Laura, died during childbirth, leaving him with their newborn son, Ethan. Devastated, Daniel buried himself in work, leaving Ethan's care to a revolving door of nannies. He loved his son, but grief and fatherhood were battles he wasn't ready to fight. Enter Sophie Reynolds, a 29-year-old from a small town in upstate New York. Sophie wasn't your typical nanny, no Ivy League degree, no city polish. What she had was a warm smile, a gentle voice, and an almost magical ability to calm even the crankiest babies. She'd grown up in a close-knit family, helping raise her younger siblings, and carried that love for kids into her work. Daniel hired her through an elite agency, impressed by her glowing references and the way she instantly soothed Ethan's cries during their first meeting. For 6 months, Sophie became Ethan's anchor, feeding him, rocking him through sleepless nights, and celebrating every milestone, from his first coup to his first wobbly roll. To Ethan, Sophie was safety, comfort, a second mother. But to Daniel? She was just the nanny, a background figure he acknowledged with curt nods and brief instructions. Daniel's world was a high-wire act. By day, he navigated the cutthroat world of finance, closing deals that made headlines. By night, he returned to a penthouse that felt hollow, despite its luxury. The silence was deafening, Laura's absence was everywhere, in the photos he couldn't bear to look at, in the nursery he rarely entered. He loved Ethan, but he didn't know how to connect with him. Changing diapers, singing lullabies, it all felt foreign, overwhelming. Sophie, meanwhile, was Ethan's everything. She'd spend hours reading him board books, playing peekaboo, and soothing him with songs her mother taught her. Daniel noticed Ethan's attachment to her, how his son's face lit up when Sophie entered the room, how he'd giggle at her silly voices. It stirred something in him, a mix of gratitude and something darker, jealousy, insecurity, maybe even guilt. He was Ethan's father, yet Sophie seemed to have the bond he couldn't build. Sophie was the picture of professionalism. She adored Ethan but kept boundaries clear, never overstepping her role. She'd leave notes for Daniel, Updates on Ethan's feeding schedule, his new favorite toy, but he rarely responded. Still, Daniel couldn't shake a growing unease. Sophie was almost too perfect, too devoted. He'd heard horror stories, nannies who stole, who manipulated wealthy families, who weren't what they seemed. Was Sophie hiding something? That seed of doubt, planted by his grief and isolation, grew into suspicion that would set the stage for a confrontation no one saw coming. Let's dive into the problem that pushed Daniel to the brink, and the truth that was about to change everything. 6 months into Sophie's tenure, Daniel's suspicions took root. It started with small things, a colleague's offhand remark about untrustworthy staff at a cocktail party, a news article about a nanny caught pocketing jewelry from a client's home. Daniel began watching Sophie with a sharper eye, noticing details he'd overlooked. She'd stay late, humming lullabies to Ethan long after her shift ended. She'd bring small toys, a rattle, a plush bunny, bought with her own money, not Daniel's. Once, he saw her pause by a framed photo of Laura on the mantel, her face clouded with an emotion he couldn't read. Was it sadness? Guilt? Something more? Daniel's grief fueled his paranoia. He wasn't sleeping, haunted by memories of Laura, her laugh, her warmth, the life they'd planned. He'd lie awake, replaying the day she died, blaming himself for not being enough. Fatherhood only deepened his sense of failure. He'd try to comfort Ethan, but his son's cries seemed to mock his efforts. When he saw Ethan nestled in Sophie's arms, calm and content, it stung. Why could a stranger connect with his son when he couldn't? He started questioning everything about Sophie. Her references were impeccable, but what if they were forged? Her background was modest, too modest, maybe. Was she after his money? His son? Something worse? The tension built over weeks. Daniel noticed Sophie's private phone calls, always taken in hushed tones in the hallway. He saw her tuck a small notebook into her bag, quickly, as if hiding it. He even checked her employee file, digging for discrepancies, but found nothing. Still, his doubts grew, fed by his own insecurities and the weight of his loss. He didn't talk to Sophie about it, he didn't know how. Instead, he let his suspicions simmer, each one adding fuel to a fire that was about to erupt. The breaking point came on a stormy November evening. Daniel had had a brutal day, a major deal collapsed, costing his firm millions. He came home exhausted, his patience razor-thin. In the nursery, he found Sophie rocking Ethan, who was fussier than usual, his cheeks red from teething. Daniel snapped, "Why is he crying? What did you do?" Sophie, calm but firm, explained that Ethan was just teething, that she'd been up with him for hours. But Daniel wasn't listening. Earlier that day, he'd found a receipt in Sophie's bag while looking for a spare key, a coffee shop purchase, nothing suspicious, but it was the spark he needed to justify his anger. "What are you hiding?" he demanded, his voice sharp. "I know you're not telling me everything." Sophie's eyes widened, hurt flashing across her face. She tried to respond, but Daniel cut her off. "I don't trust you," he said, his tone ice-cold. "You're too close to my son. Pack your things. You're done." The words hung heavy in the air. Sophie's face fell, but she didn't argue. She gently placed Ethan in his crib, her hands trembling, and grabbed her coat. As she headed for the door, her eyes glistened with unshed tears. But before she could leave, something happened, something that stopped Daniel cold and forced him to face the truth. What was Sophie hiding? And why did Ethan's next move change everything? Let's rewind to understand how this moment came to be. To understand the weight of that moment, we need to go back to Sophie's first day with the Carters. She arrived at Daniel's penthouse, a nervous 29-year-old clutching a worn notebook filled with tips from her nanny training. The penthouse was intimidating, gleaming surfaces, modern furniture, and a view of Central Park that felt like a postcard. Ethan was just 3 months old, a tiny bundle with big blue eyes and a cry that echoed through the silent space. Daniel, still raw from Laura's death, was a shadow of himself. He gave Sophie a brisk tour, his voice clipped, before disappearing into his office. Sophie sensed his grief, his distance, but her focus was Ethan. From day one, Sophie poured her heart into caring for him. She learned his rhythms, when he was hungry, when he needed a nap, when he just wanted to be held. She sang him lullabies her mother had taught her, old folk songs from her childhood in a small upstate town. Ethan would watch her, his eyes wide, gripping her finger with surprising strength. To Sophie, he wasn't just a job, he was a little soul who needed love, especially with his mother gone and his father absent. She saw the photos of Laura around the penthouse. Smiling, radiant, frozen in time, and felt the weight of her absence. She didn't cry, but she made a silent vow, she'd give Ethan the care his mother would have wanted. Sophie carried a secret, one she never shared with Daniel. Before nannying, she'd been a social worker, working with at-risk families in her hometown. It was grueling work, filled with moments of hope but also heartbreak. The breaking point came 2 years earlier, with a case that still haunted her, a young boy, Tommy, caught in a broken foster system. Sophie fought for him, but the system failed, and Tommy was lost to a tragic outcome. The guilt crushed her, driving her to leave social work. Nannying became her refuge, a way to make a difference one child at a time. When she met Ethan, she saw a chance to give him what she couldn't give Tommy: love, stability, a fighting chance. Over the months, Sophie's bond with Ethan deepened. She'd spend hours reading him bored books, her voice animated as she made animal noises. She'd play peekaboo, delighting in his giggles. She celebrated his milestones, his first roll, his first tooth, each one a victory. She started a journal, not just for herself but for Ethan, documenting his growth. She wrote about his favorite songs, his gummy smiles, the way he'd fuss until she sang, "You Are My Sunshine." She hoped to give it to Daniel one day, a bridge to help him connect with his son. Daniel, meanwhile, was drowning. Work was his escape, a way to avoid the pain of Laura's death. He'd spend 12-hour days at the office, closing deals, chasing success, but it couldn't fill the void. At home, he'd see Ethan in Sophie's arms, content and calm, and feel a stab of inadequacy. He didn't know how to be a father, diapers, feedings, lullabies were foreign territory. Sophie's ease with Ethan highlighted his own failures, stirring resentment he couldn't name. His suspicions grew, fed by small things: a private call Sophie took, the notebook she tucked away, the way she seemed to know Ethan better than he did. He didn't ask questions, he let his fears build a case against her. That stormy evening, when Daniel accused Sophie, it wasn't just about the receipt or her bond with Ethan. It was his grief, his guilt, his fear of losing the only family he had left. Sophie, hurt but composed, didn't fight back. She set Ethan in his crib, her eyes glistening, and headed for the door. But as she passed the nursery, Ethan's cries pierced the silence, a desperate, heart-wrenching wail. Daniel rushed to him, expecting to comfort his son. Instead, Ethan's tiny arms reached past him, toward Sophie, his little face red with need. Daniel froze. His son, his own blood, was choosing the nanny over him. The sight shattered him, not with anger, but with clarity. He called out, "Sophie, wait." She turned, her face a mix of pain and resolve. "What's in the notebook?" he asked, his voice softer, almost pleading. Sophie hesitated, then handed it over. It was her journal, pages filled with Ethan's moments, his first laugh, his favorite toy, the way he'd fall asleep to her singing. Daniel read, his hands trembling. "You wrote this, for him?" he asked. Sophie nodded. "I wanted him to know how loved he is. And I wanted you to know, too." She told him about her past as a social worker, the boy she couldn't save, her promise to give Ethan what she couldn't give Tommy. Daniel stood silent, the weight of his mistake crashing down. That moment in the nursery was a seismic shift. Ethan's outstretched arms weren't just a baby's instinct, they were a mirror, reflecting Daniel's absence and Sophie's unwavering presence. As Daniel flipped through the journal, he saw months of love poured into his son, every milestone, every smile, every sleepless night documented with care. Sophie wasn't hiding a scheme. She was hiding her heart, giving Ethan the love Daniel couldn't. He looked at Sophie, his voice breaking. "I was wrong. I thought you were taking him from me." Sophie shook her head, tears in her eyes. "I'd never do that. He needs you, Daniel. I'm just here to help." For the first time, Daniel saw her, not as a threat, but as a lifeline. He asked her to stay, not just as a nanny, but as a partner in raising Ethan. Over the next weeks, Daniel transformed. He started leaving work early, learning to change diapers, mastering the lullabies Sophie taught him. He and Sophie talked, not just about Ethan, but about Laura, about grief, about the walls they'd both built. Sophie shared her own losses, and Daniel began to heal, step by step. Ethan's smiles became his purpose, and Sophie's journal became his guide, a roadmap to his son's heart. Sophie's story is a testament to the power of love and trust. She could have walked away, let Daniel's accusations end their story, but she stayed, choosing Ethan over her own hurt. That choice changed everything. Daniel didn't just keep Sophie on, he made her family, giving her a raise, a room in the penthouse, and his trust. He started therapy, confronting his grief, and became the father Ethan needed, present, engaged, singing, "You Are My Sunshine," every night. Sophie found healing, too. Caring for Ethan restored her faith in making a difference. She began mentoring other nannies, teaching them her journal method to help parents connect with their kids. Today, Ethan is a thriving toddler, with a father who adores him and a nanny who's more like an aunt. This story reminds us that trust is fragile but rebuildable. Sophie's love for Ethan, and Daniel's courage to change, show that even in our darkest moments, connection can light the way. If Sophie and Daniel's story touched your heart, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs a dose of hope. Subscribe and ring the bell for more stories that inspire and uplift. Let's spread love and trust together. Drop a comment, have you ever rebuilt trust with someone? We'd love to hear your story. See you in the next video.